Welcome everyone. Today's presentation is going to be on intermittent fasting. Now, just a pre-note before I go through the presentation, you do not have to do intermittent fasting. This is completely optional. It's not a mandatory part of the program. We had many clients in the past that have run through our program and got really, really good results without doing intermittent fasting. Some of our biggest people that have had our biggest losses and biggest transformations didn't do the fasting, but I'd say majority of people did. So it's completely up to you, but I'm going to explain how it all works anyway, in case you're not familiar with it. So you may have heard the term time-restricted eating or intermittent fasting. They're interchangeable. And essentially what it means is that we're eating within a compressed window of time. So the most common way that most people do it is they will go for 16 hours in the day of not eating anything, any food, or anything with calories, and then they'll eat within a compressed window of time. So within 8 hours, they can eat as much, when I say as much as they want, as much as they feel they need to. So within that 16 hours, that's just an example. It can be done at lots of different time ratios. The idea is that we're giving our body an opportunity to not just continually burn what we're eating, but actually tap into our fat stores. So the basic sort of premise of it comes from the design of the human body. And we're designed to go through cycles of feast and famine. And if you think about when, before we were civilized and, maybe when we were hunter-gatherers, cavemen, if you want to call it that, we would have gone through periods of time where we would have had, a hunt, a kill, and we would have had a lot of food. And then we would have gone through windows of time where we weren't successful with our hunts and we didn't have food at all. Now, the body developed the ability to store extra food energy. So when we did get a big kill and a big hunt, we were able to eat more than what we actually required in that particular moment in time. And we could store that excess energy as fat tissue. So I like to think of it as it's like, stored food energy for later when there's no food available. There always would have been periods where we would have just not had food available to us and we would have had to tap into those fat stores. And that was a very clever design of the body, because you can imagine if we didn't have the ability to store food as energy in the form of fat, then when we went through those famine cycles and we just didn't have enough food available for a few days, we may perish. It's a good survival mechanism to be able to do that. It may not seem that way these days because we have an abundance of food available, and we don't want to be storing all this excess fat. But a lot of it comes down to the fact that we don't actually ever give our bodies an opportunity to burn our fat stores. We're always just eating the next meal, the next meal, the next meal. So when we create these fasting windows, it's an opportunity to burn off excess fat stores. Thanks, Sam, for this flattering photo that you put in here. So my personal experience was I came from, I guess, a little bit more of a bodybuilding mentality, which is where the fitness industry, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, that's where it sort of started. And we were always taught, bodybuilders are like, you got to eat consistent small meals spaced throughout the day. You never want to go more than 2 or 3 hours or 4 hours without eating, because then you slow your metabolism down. We want to be stoking the fire, keeping your metabolism burning high, and that's when we're going to burn the most fat. And I bought into that concept, and that's how I used to eat. And it wasn't until it wasn't until I read this article on, it was a website called, what was it? Nerd Fitness. And in the article, they sort of explained some of the science and they explained it in an understandable way. And I was like, okay, that actually makes sense. And the way they explained it was that as a hunter-gatherer, which is our design, that's our biology, we still have the same biology as what we did, a few thousand years ago. We would have had periods where we didn't have enough food. And during those periods, rather than our body slowing the metabolic rate down initially, they sort of talked about the first 24 to 48 hours. Within that period, they said hormones get released to actually jack up your metabolic rate so that you are more motivated to go and find the next hunt and the next kill. And it made sense to me. I was like, yeah, okay. And then they said after the 48 hours, then your metabolic rate would slow down because it'd say, all right, now we're getting into survival mode. We're running out of calories. We need to slow our metabolic rate down because, yeah, we're really not getting any food. But the initial phase is that it drives everything higher and your metabolism actually increases. And over years, I've sort of learned my own body. And you've got to become intuitive with your body. I've noticed my body temperature drops sometimes when I'm fasting, and I know that's a signal to eat because my metabolism and my thyroid function has gone down. But as a general rule, the metabolism isn't affected in the short term. It's only when you go a number of days. So with this new knowledge, I started to do some experimentation with myself. As I mentioned, I used to eat very small meals, spaced out. The first thing I'd do as soon as I woke up would always be have a meal and eat, stoke those metabolism, the fires of metabolism. And my normal sort of work routine would be that I would wake up at 5:30, I would eat breakfast, I would start work at 6, train clients right through till 10 o'clock. By 10 o'clock, coming close to 10 o'clock, I would be starving. And then I'd have to eat a meal, wait an hour, and then I'd do a workout. And the funny thing was, when I first started to experiment with the intermittent fasting, what I did was woke up, didn't eat. I just drank water and I did my same routine, got to 10 o'clock, training clients, and I actually found that I wasn't hungry. And I actually realized that, hey, I can do my workout straight away. I don't have to eat straight. I'm not dying for my next meal. I can do my workout straight away and then eat after then. And I was fine doing that. And it was a real sort of eye-opener for me because I was like, hang on, I ate and then I was hungry at 10. When I didn't eat, I wasn't hungry at 10, which was a bit of a head scratcher. But I realized that once we start, and particularly what you eat, if you eat more higher carb type foods, you start to release insulin. And then we start to go on that blood sugar fluctuation where our blood sugar goes up and then your body releases insulin, your blood sugar goes down. And often it can release a little bit too much insulin, so the blood sugar goes a little bit too low, and then you get really hungry and you have to eat again, and you go through that cycle. So it was quite liberating when I realized that it really calmed my hunger signals down because I could keep stable energy and I was able to, essentially eat my fat stores as energy, and my body was fine doing that. So as I'm, as what I'm talking about, this sort of relates to becoming becoming more fat adapted and a better fat burner. So fasting is very effective at that because, as we talked about in the other unit where we talked about becoming fat adapted, when you're fasting, you're not eating anything, so you're not releasing any insulin. So remember, insulin is our primary fat storage hormone. It causes our body to store fat, but it also stops our body from burning fat. So when we have zero insulin, it makes it much easier for our body to tap into our fat stores. And especially if we've lowered those pockets, like we talked about our carb stores in our body, if we lower those pockets down, the body will start to chew into the fat stores and it will make metabolic adaptations. Metabolic pathways will become more efficient to burn that fat, which is what we want. We want to be a good dual fuel burner where we can easily, burn the high octane, as I like to call them, carbs, which, anyone can do that, but also be effective at burning fat and our fat stores. And it really does get easier over time as your body becomes more adapted. So how long and how often? What I love about fasting is it really is a choose your own adventure. You you can do it some days, you can do it every single day. I don't do it every day. I do it some days of the week, maybe 4 out of 7 days. I tend to do it, not religiously. I tend to do different fasting lengths. Most people do the 16/8. That tends to be the most popular. Some people go an 18/6 or 23/1. I've experimented with different ones. I find, yeah, around the 16 is pretty good for me. Sometimes, even 15 or 14 or, 17 or 18. I mix it up on how I'm feeling. So I recommend to start, whoops, I recommend to start small. So maybe you start with 12, 13, 14 hours and then slowly build up your fasting window if it is a big change for you. And you'll get used to it over time and you'll be able to extend that out as you become more fat adapted. And as I mentioned, you might like to do it every day. Maybe you want to do it just a few days. Make it fit your lifestyle. That's the key. I find that when I am a little bit busier, not stressed busy, but busy with lots of things to do, it's much easier to do fasting. On days like the weekends, I tend, sometimes if I'm in the garden, I get out in the garden, it's like lunchtime and I'll eat then. But quite often I'll choose to have breakfast because I like to have breakfast and I want to have breakfast. But you can choose your own venture. Do what suits you. Some of the pitfalls. It has been known to not be effective for everyone. So again, you've got to experiment with your own body. I've found that majority of people it is very effective, and generally, I guess the cliche is that women, it tends to be more effective in men than women. But in all honesty, I've found that it is highly effective in most women as well. I've got a really good book. If you're a female and you want to learn a little bit more about fasting for females, it's called, where is it? It's on my bookshelf here. Fast Like a Girl. It's by Dr. Mindy Pelz, Pelz. She's got a YouTube channel. She's on lots of podcasts. It's worth looking her up and listening to some of her stuff. She's got a lot of resources. So she talks about, female hormones and, how to do fasting for females a little bit better. Another pitfall is you can overeat. So if you fast for too long, this is my personal experience. I know that if I go too long, then I tend to have my hunger signals get out of control, and I get ravenously hungry when I have my first meal. There are some strategies which we'll talk about later, but yeah, work out the length that works for you, so that you're not getting to that point. And another important point is that it can't undo poor food choices. I've seen a lot of people that are eating a standard Australian diet, not a nutritious diet, not very good food, and they think, oh, this fasting, that'll solve all my problems because I'll just eat less. That's my problem. You still have to eat a nutritionally healthy diet, a balanced diet, and it's not going to undo the damage from eating a really poor diet. So don't think it's a magic pill that's going to solve your problems. Don't fast if, the general recommendation is if you're under 18 years old, malnourished or underweight, it's probably not a good idea. And obviously if you're breastfeeding or if you're pregnant. Be careful with fasting if you have low thyroid function, because that can add a bit of stress to the thyroid potentially for some people. I know some people that have been able to do it with low thyroid and they've been okay, but you do have to be careful. If you have a history of disordered eating or eating patterns, then probably not a good idea to be playing with things like fasting, because of the mindset side of, that deprivation and restriction might not be the best, the best path to go down. if you're chronically stressed, so if you have adrenal issues, cortisol dysregulation, if you have chronic fatigue, Addison's disease, things like that, I would definitely avoid fasting because it will put another stress on your system. And as we'll talk about in a future episode, future training, we're going to have a deep dive into stress and the effects on body. This will just add another stress into the funnel. If you're diabetic or you have blood sugar regulation issues, be very careful with fasting. Certainly, if you're taking medications, you need to be very careful. I would always, for any of these medical issues, I would always consult your healthcare practitioner, particularly if you're having medications or supplements, and just get their advice. Let them know your thoughts, let them know what you're thinking about doing, and just get them to, clear it, that it's going to be safe for you. And, it may even require an adjustment of medication. Another great resource is Dr. Jason Fung. He's a nephrologist from Canada, and he's got a few really good books on fasting that I've read, and he deals with a lot of diabetic patients because he's a nephrologist, and he often, when he gets them to fast, he has to adjust their medications. They're taking insulin and things like that. So just be aware that you may have to, you will want to talk to your practitioner to make sure that you do it safely. The number one rule in fasting is if you feel unwell in any way, just break your fast and have something to eat. It's as simple as that. If you've got it in your head that, oh, I've got 5 more hours that I was planning to do a fast for this long, and you're starting to feel lightheaded and you're starting to feel a bit sick and, foggy or whatever, don't be dogmatic and don't, listen to your body. So just break the fast because maybe that day your body's telling you it's not the right day for you to do it. So just have something to eat. Obviously, we're still eating lower carb, healthier foods and things like that, but don't be too rigid. Be sure to drink lots of water in your fasting period. I find that fasting personally, that's my opportunity to really get majority of my water intake. And it helps with satiety because you put something in your belly and you're not getting as hungry. But I see it as like a bit of a flush. It's a cleanse. Your digestive system's empty and you're sort of flushing it through. So I find, drinking extra water is a really good thing that you can do in that fasting window. As we mentioned, meds or supplements, check with your provider to make sure that it's all good. Make sure you eat lots of nutrient-dense foods. So in your eating window, we want to be making sure, generally what can tend to happen is we're not deliberately trying to eat less calories, but you'll have it, what happens, they call it spontaneous calorie reduction. So it just so happens that because you didn't eat for that period of time, you'll end up eating a little bit less. For most of us, that's a good thing. Because most of us tend to eat more than what we really require, and that's why we've accumulated, extra body fat. But make sure that when you do eat, you eat highly nutritious food, nutrient-dense foods that are going to give you all the vitamins, minerals, cofactors that your body needs to function at its best. You might want to avoid fasting on high-stress days, or after you've had a night of really poor sleep, as that can really affect your blood sugar regulation. I've had clients who are diabetic that have tested their blood sugars, not fasting, but just in general, they constantly test their blood sugars. And they've told me that when they have days where they have a lot of stress or when they have a really poor sleep, they see a massive spike in their blood sugar. So it does have a massive effect. So if you're fasting, be aware of that, and perhaps that might not be the best day to fast. So a little bit of the science and benefits of fasting. So what tends to happen over time is your hormones start to adjust. Insulin, as we said, as we've mentioned a number of times, it's our primary fat storage hormone. It goes down, which is a good thing if we're wanting to liberate our fat stores and burn into them. And it helps us tap into those fat stores. HGH, human growth hormone, it goes up. Noradrenaline, which is like a go 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 hormone, it goes up. And these hormones help to drive us to keep our metabolism running high, keep our fat burning engines running high, and they're good muscle build. Well, HGH is a good muscle builder as well. Ghrelin levels. So ghrelin is a hormone that regulates hunger. It goes, it gets moderated, so you're not getting as hungry. And this all allows you to get access to your locked away stored food energy, our fat stores. So this, hormonal, this series of hormonal changes put us in a state that are going to make us a very efficient fat burner. Some of the science, you may have heard of the term autophagy. Some people call it autophagy. I've heard different people call it different. But either way, it's the body's ability to sort of clean house. So we'll go through and just sort of break down old cells and break them down into their raw materials and build them back into healthy cells. Some people believe that fasting has potential anti-cancer benefits because your body's going through and doing that cleanup, having an opportunity to get rid of early stage cancerous cells and things like that. But, it's still sort of on the line of, whether it's 100% yes or no. But either way, it's definitely been proven to be great for autophagy. A lot of people believe it's anti-aging because of that, that cleaning house effect. It liberates your energy. So if you think about your blood flow and your energy levels, or your energy is not having to constantly digest food. So it liberates it to go to other areas of your body, boost your immune system, do a lot of other things. It just gives your body the resources to work on other things other than constantly having to digest food. So it just gives your digestive system a bit of a rest. One of the common benefits that a lot of people report is they have less junk food cravings. And again, this comes down to the hormonal changes that happen. We're not having that hormonal spikes of insulin where we're getting hungry all the time. And quite often your taste, when you're going through that fasting window, when you do first eat something, your taste senses will be heightened and things will taste sweeter and taste more enjoyable. So you don't have to go for those hyper palatable foods, which are processed foods that are full of sugar and artificially made to taste, much more flavorful with artificial means and unhealthy means. A lot of people talk about mental clarity. They find they're a lot more clearer in the mind and they can process a lot better. Getting off the carb roller coaster, so that sugar high, sugar low, just more stable energy levels, like we mentioned. And even BDNF, a very important, it's called, I believe it's brain-derived neurotropic factor, which is a lot of studies relating to this, and it's highly correlated if you have good levels of that. Less cognitive decline, Alzheimer's, dementia, all that sort of stuff. So it's another important thing, which is really important for our brain health, and it's known to boost that. And you just have more energy in general, which who doesn't want more energy? Some more benefits is it saves money because you're skipping a meal, and it saves time for prepping, cooking, cleaning, that whole thing. It gives you time to do other things. A lot of people report that if they've got a lot of weight to lose, and they have they end up with stretched skin, that they get that less from fasting because of that autophagy, that it can tend to sort of chew into the stretched skin. Not 100% sure whether I believe that or not, but a lot of people do report it. So it's not 100%, but yeah, it certainly does happen. Enhanced mindfulness is another fantastic benefit. We unconsciously eat all the time, and sometimes we don't even put too much thought into what we're doing. It's just like, oh, it's that time, I'll eat, even when we're not hungry and don't need it. So it just makes us a little bit more mindful of what we're putting in our mouth when we're eating, the tastes of it. It can be really beneficial for that. Insulin sensitivity. Your cells, so if you've been eating a diet and constantly drip feeding yourself carbs all day, your body's releasing insulin all the time. And it's almost like your cells become deaf to the sounds of insulin. It's like if you've been at a concert and you've been near the music and then you go out to a normal day and someone's talking to you, you can't hear them. Your receptors sort of become nulled down to overstimulation. So same when we're fasting, no insulin. So our cells get an opportunity to become more receptive to insulin. So your body doesn't have to produce as much. And it's just more flexible for everyday life. You'll find that you can go out and not have to worry about where your next meal is coming from because you know you can go a long period without eating. As I mentioned before, customize your fasting periods, the days, the times, how long you do it. It doesn't have to be the same every week. You might change it from week to week or day to day, how you're feeling. Depends if you're a structured person or if you like to be a little bit more free-flowing. Benefit is increased metabolism and energy. It resets the hunger hormones, as we mentioned, and it minimizes the impact of events like, you know, birthdays or Christmas, where maybe somewhere where you'd overindulge, you can fast after it. I always like to do after Christmas because I find, yeah, I just want to give my digestive system, it's all, you know, I've eaten too much and everything's crammed in there and it's not moving through. And I just have a bit of a fasting period and you feel so much better after it. You can even fast before it, knowing that you're going to be consuming a bit more, just to balance out your calorie intake. As we mentioned, water, 100%. It's not like Ramadan or, you know, some of those religious fasts where you're not drinking water or eating food. We're definitely drinking water, 100% want to be drinking extra water. I like to do a little pinch of salt, lime or lemon juice in there. I find that that's really good, just to get the water down and just to have a little bit more minerals. Maybe mineral water, herbal tea or normal tea or coffee is fine. Bone broth can be really good as well. Or you might try some infused water or like a bulletproof coffee where you're having, you know, some fats in your coffee uh, like butter or coconut oil. Some helpful tips, start slow, build up slowly. Don't go too big to start with. Stay occupied and busy, but not stressed in your fasting window. It makes it so much more easier. And hunger just comes in waves. So don't think it's going to get harder and harder and harder. It will come in a wave and then it will subside. Plan in advance around social events. Always break your fast with a small low-carb snack 30 to 60 minutes before. And that will help tame the hunger, so you're not getting ravenously hungry. To maintain your metabolism firing high, make sure you are eating enough in that fasting window. We're not trying to deprive ourselves. Some people like to even do a couple of tablespoons extra of olive oil or coconut oil in their meals just to get the calories up, to keep their engines firing. I like to do that sometimes. But, you know, obviously you don't want to have too much because we're still trying to tap into our fat stores. Drink lots of water, salt, lemon juice, broth if you like, which is really good for gut health. And avoid tempting situations when you're fasting. Don't do your food shop or go to a service station, movies. It's easy to overeat, so remember your why you're doing it. So, you know, just be sensible. And don't limit calories, as we said. Be sensible. And you might feel like your stomach shrunk, but it probably hasn't. It's more just that it's the hunger signals aren't as strong. The more you do it, the easier it gets. And just be intuitive with it. Listen to your body is the #1 key point. Thanks for watching, guys.